Good morning. Thanks for joining. What I'd like to do is I'd like to review why it is important to have an annual disaster recovery test performed. So most of the time, when we're monitoring your backups and verifying that they're working, every day we get notification, success or failure. If we have a failure, we log in and we work to resolve the failure. Normally, we don't have failures, but it is definitely a possibility that something could go wrong and cause the backup to not succeed, which we then log in, resolve, and then work through. Every day, we get verification whether your backup was successful or if there was a failure, and then we resolve it. However, that means, the only thing that means when we're going through the DR test and verification is that in the event that we needed to actually turn it on, there's a high likelihood that it's going to be available for us, especially if there are successful backup verification logs that were sent to us at the end of the job from the previous time that the backup started. One of the things that we recommend, and one of the items that every organization should consider, is having a disaster recovery plan. In addition to having a disaster recovery plan, everyone should also consider and invest in a disaster recovery test, at minimum annually. That means that what happens is there's a plan for disaster recovery of what needs to take place in order to be able to verify that the backup jobs that are completing every day have the capability to be turned on and working in a disaster scenario. Ideally, this is done so that you can proactively identify when something is not going to be working and you can resolve it. And if everything works properly, then that's fantastic. You know you have a good backup plan in place and everything works. And I can tell you from experience, more often than not, a lot of the disaster recovery tests turn up issues that exist that there would be no way to absolutely know that they existed without going through the exercise of trying to turn everything on. So what can you expect with the DR annual verification test, and why is it important? It allows us as your technology organization to identify proactively when something is not working the way it should. And there's really no way other than to go through a verification annually to verify it, to know that something is going to work when you need it. And so the whole process, if everything works okay, should tell you the recovery time objectives were met for the servers, which means that the servers got turned on in the time that they were supposed to, which typically would be under 2 hours from the time that the verification or that the backup restore started. And the recovery point objectives also get measured, and the recovery point objective is from the last backup to the last time that you had the backup job, from the time that you worked, the recovery point. Did it meet the objectives that you had? So, for example, if you were having an 11 p.m. backup every night, and you came into work and you had a 3 hour, you came into work and at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, you had a failure and you needed to restore. Well, your recovery point is from 11 p.m. the night before. So every business has a recovery point objective of a certain amount of time that they can allow for a lapse in backup. So the question would be, if you had a disaster at 3 p.m. in the afternoon and you needed to restore, do you have the capacity and the capability to go back and re-enter everything that you did from the time somebody came into work, whether that was 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. until 3 o'clock when it failed, because your last backup was at 11 p.m. And if the answer is no, your recovery point objective is not that long, maybe you can only recover an hour or every 2 hours, well then the amount of backups that take place the frequency has to increase to take that into account. So that being the case, when you're doing a DR test, there are so many moving parts, but you need to have the verification. The first part is that the backup works. You can turn up the servers, and once the servers are turned up, it is also highly recommended that users of the organizations are prepared and organized to be able to log into the systems and verify that all their applications are working as expected. And this gives us the capability to confirm the restore process work. It also allows us to ensure that the users accessing it are confirming that everything is functioning the way that it needs to be. Once that's confirmed and all of the results are gathered, we will then provide you with a report card of how everything went. Did all the servers that were turned up meet the recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives? In addition, did every user confirm that all the data was there and available to us? And if that is the case, then it was a success. We will then turn back everything, shut down the disaster recovery environment, and turn on the real environment so that everything goes back to function. At that point, we will need the users to one more time verify that everything is available to them, and that will conclude the disaster recovery exercise. At the end of that exercise, if we ran into any issues, something that did not allow us to work properly, something didn't get turned on properly, we will work to address that. If the success of the disaster recovery was not attained because something didn't work right, the issues will get addressed, and then the disaster recovery test will need to get rescheduled so that we can ensure the workability of everything that you have with the disaster recovery in the backup scenario is functioning, and the organization can confirm that this is working. Now, many organizations today that are larger that you work with, that outsource to you, they require you to provide them with feedback about whether or not you have a disaster recovery plan in place. And if you do, they want to know when was the last time that it was tested and what were the results. So the report card that we're going to provide you and the results that you'll get will be what you would be able to provide your clients to ensure them that should something go wrong with your environment, you have a means to recover, and that they should be comfortable in providing you work which would in that case continue to allow them to work with you. Many organizations rely just on backup, and unfortunately they find out too late when they need to recover that something was not working the way it needed to be, even though the backups reported that they were successful every day. So that highlights why an annual disaster recovery test is critical. It identifies areas that need to be resolved, or it will confirm that everything that you have in place is functional, and if you had any issues, you would be able to recover from them to continue working. And that's it. So thank you for your time in listening to this, and please schedule your annual disaster recovery test, because it's the only way to really know that everything is functioning properly or not. Thank you.